For over 7 months, the once fluid and vibrant border between Canada and the United States stood still. Highways that usually carried millions of cars filled with eager tourists became eerily quiet. Airports saw a dramatic fall in arrivals from Canada, a country that historically ranks as the #1 source of international visitors to the United States. The sudden halt was not just a travel inconvenience, it was a shockwave that rippled through entire communities whose lifeblood depends on Canadian travelers. When a border so economically intertwined is shut, the consequences are monumental. Families were separated, businesses struggled, and entire regions saw their economies wobble. For decades, Canadian tourists have been a cornerstone of U.S. tourism. In fact, before the border closures, more than 20 million Canadians crossed south each year, spending billions on shopping, entertainment, accommodation, and leisure. They filled casinos in Las Vegas, outlet malls in Florida, ski resorts in Colorado, and the buzzing streets of New York City. Unlike many long-haul international visitors, Canadians often travel by car, making short but frequent trips, creating a dependable and steady stream of revenue. This tourism was not just about dollars, it was about cultural exchange, family reunions, and traditions. Generations of Canadians grew up with yearly summer road trips into the U.S., fueling everything from local diners to luxury resorts. The halt of Canadian visitors was like pulling the plug on a major artery of the U.S. economy. According to tourism boards and state officials, the loss was staggering. Billions of dollars in potential revenue vanished in less than a year. Small towns near the border, which once thrived on weekend shopping trips and cross-border gas sales, reported declines as steep as 80% in retail activity. In border states such as New York, Vermont, Michigan, and Washington, the absence of Canadians was not just noticeable, it was crippling. Hotels sat empty. Attractions went unseen. Even the massive Disney and Universal resorts in Florida felt the vacuum. Canadian snowbirds, who normally migrate south to escape harsh winters, stayed home, depriving the Sunshine State of hundreds of millions in seasonal spending.
Being the headlines of billions lost are the personal stories.
A Michigan diner owner who once saw weekend lines of Canadian families now faces empty booths. A Las Vegas hotel manager recalls the drop in Canadian tour groups who once filled entire blocks of rooms. A Vermont ski instructor noticed slopes that were unusually quiet, missing the familiar French-Canadian accents of Montreal families. These stories are more than anecdotes. They are the lived reality of communities deeply dependent on their northern neighbors. The absence of Canadians revealed just how reliant U.S. tourism is on its closest partner. While international travel from Europe and Asia is significant, it is seasonal and often limited to big cities. Canadians, on the other hand, sustain secondary markets, rural towns, local events, regional parks. Their absence showed policymakers and tourism leaders that without Canada, the U.S. tourism ecosystem is dangerously exposed. Florida has always been one of the biggest beneficiaries of Canadian tourism. Known as the ultimate winter escape for retirees and families alike, the Sunshine State usually welcomes over 4 million Canadians per year. These visitors don't just stay for a weekend. Many spend weeks or even months, renting condos, filling hotels, and supporting the service economy. When the border froze, an estimated $3 billion in Canadian snowbird spending vanished in a single winter season. Restaurants in Miami Beach saw half-empty dining rooms. Vacation rentals in Fort Lauderdale stayed vacant. And golf courses, normally buzzing with Canadians escaping the snow, faced one of their quietest winters in decades. The ripple effect reached far. Construction workers building seasonal housing projects, car rental agencies, theme parks, and even local grocery stores all reported steep declines. Las Vegas might feel like an international city fueled by visitors from Asia, Europe, and across America, but Canadians are a crucial part of the mix. Roughly 1.5 million Canadians travel to Las Vegas annually, often booking all-inclusive packages with flights, hotels, and shows. Casinos, buffets, and entertainment venues heavily rely on this predictable flow. But in 2020 to 2021, the picture changed. Canadian tour groups vanished. Entire casino floors reported lower traffic. Shows that once drew crowds of mixed international tourists suddenly leaned heavily on U.S. domestic travelers. The city adapted, but the absence of Canadians left a clear gap in revenue. It revealed how even a city as diversified as Vegas is not immune to border disruptions. While Florida and Nevada attract attention for their glitter and scale, the northeastern states arguably felt the Canadian absence most directly. States like New York, Vermont, and Maine thrive on cross-border day trips. Families from Montreal often drive down for shopping sprees, filling malls and outlets with eager customers. Gas stations, diners, and ski resorts have long depended on this steady traffic. When restrictions came into force, parking lots were empty. Outlet malls in Plattsburgh, once so popular with Quebec shoppers that store clerks spoke French, saw traffic fall by 70 to 80%. Ski resorts reported massive declines in winter bookings, with many operators forced to cut staff. For these regions, the Canadian visitor isn't just extra revenue, it is the very foundation of their local economy. The absence of Canadians also devastated the airline industry. Routes between Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and major U.S. hubs like New York, Chicago, and Orlando were slashed. Airlines reported some of the steepest declines in cross-border flights since the 9/11 era. Hospitality chains, from Marriott to Hilton, issued profit warnings, citing the collapse of Canadian tourism as one of the key drivers. Even Airbnb hosts in major U.S. cities felt the pinch. According to internal analytics, Canadian bookings on Airbnb US dropped by more than 85% year-on-year, leaving many urban hosts scrambling for replacement guests. Tourism isn't just about visitors spending money, it's about the jobs that spending sustains. Analysts estimated that the loss of Canadian tourism put hundreds of thousands of U.S. service sector jobs at risk. From waiters and hotel cleaners to event staff and Uber drivers, the absence of one of America's most consistent tourist groups pushed fragile service industries closer to collapse. What makes this particularly concerning is that tourism jobs are often concentrated in regions with few alternatives. A casino town, a ski resort, or a border shopping hub has limited fallback industries. Without Canadians, many of these jobs disappeared overnight, leaving families without income and communities struggling. By the end of the 7th month of closures, analysts began to see the bigger picture. U.S. tourism had exposed a dangerous over-reliance on Canadian visitors. While other international markets are important, few deliver the same consistency. Canadians often return multiple times a year, travel by car, and spend money across both high-end destinations and small towns. This crisis underscored the importance of diversification. Tourism boards began asking, "What if we lose Canada again?" The industry realized it needed better digital strategies, more domestic tourism campaigns, and new partnerships to weather shocks. Yet, many admitted privately, without Canadians, the system feels incomplete. It's important to remember that the travel freeze wasn't just an American problem. Canada also felt the shock. Many border towns in Ontario and British Columbia rely heavily on U.S. visitors for shopping and entertainment. Cross-border shopping, casino trips, and family tourism often flow south to north as well as north to south. But because the U.S. economy is larger and more tourism-dependent in specific states, the net loss hit America harder. While Canadian businesses in border towns like Windsor and Niagara Falls suffered, the scale of U.S. losses, estimated at over $20 billion by mid-year, dwarfed the Canadian side. Tourism decline cannot be separated from the larger political context. Under Donald Trump, U.S.-Canada relations were tested repeatedly through tariff battles on steel, aluminum, and other goods. These disputes left lingering resentment. Although Canadians continued to travel south despite tariffs, analysts suggest that Trump's policies created an undercurrent of dissatisfaction. When border restrictions arrived, this existing tension made the economic shock feel even sharper. Canadians who might have overlooked past political fights were now rethinking how much they should rely on the U.S. for vacations, shopping, and business trips. Economists studying the crisis pointed to clear indicators. 7 months without Canadian visitors equals $20+ billion lost. Hotel occupancy in border states fell by as much as 40%. Casino revenues in Nevada dropped by 12 to 15%, directly linked to fewer Canadian players. Airline traffic between Canada and U.S. fell by over 80%. Employment in the hospitality sector declined by hundreds of thousands. Numbers stripped away political rhetoric. They showed a fragile system brought to its knees by the absence of a single, consistent customer base: Canada. By 2025, global tourism is reshaping itself. Analysts note that North American travel trends are diverging. Domestic U.S. tourism is recovering strongly. International arrivals from Europe and Asia are rebounding slower. Canadian travel remains a crucial linchpin, not flashy, but steady, predictable, and recession-resistant. The question is whether lessons have been learned. Will the U.S. diversify more? Will Canada push harder for domestic leisure instead of cross-border travel? Early data suggests that Canadian travelers are exploring Europe and domestic destinations more than before. Experts remain cautiously optimistic. People will always want to travel, and the U.S. offers unmatched attractions, from Florida beaches to New York skylines. But the psychological shock of closed borders lingers. Tourism boards now invest more in digital advertising and reassurance campaigns, telling Canadians, "We are ready for you, and we need you back." Still, some fear a permanent dent. A percentage of Canadians have shifted their habits. Instead of Las Vegas, some book Mexico. Instead of Florida, they buy cottages in Ontario. Those shifts, once established, can last for decades. The U.S. tourism collapse during those 7 months was a wake-up call. Tourism is not just leisure, it's serious economic infrastructure. It sustains jobs, tax revenues, and regional stability. Losing Canadians was not simply about fewer hotel bookings. It revealed how dependent entire local economies are on predictable flows of cross-border travel.
The final lesson:
diversify, innovate, and prepare for shocks. Because whether from tariffs, politics, or pandemics, the system is always more fragile than it looks.